Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope those who live in the parts of the state that were hit hard with that storm yesterday have recovered and shoveled out and have their power back and internet back. We're trying to recover here in Albany, but the sun is shining, so that's a good way to clean up from the storm. Just a couple housekeeping items. Please allow 7 to 10 business days to have your credit recorded on your portal. You will also receive a letter from us in the office. If you have any questions during the webinar, you want to type them in the question box and we will get those answered for you. At this time, I'd like to welcome Lily McMurrow. Lily is a licensed funeral director and embalmer and is also a licensed attorney. Lily received her BA from Lehigh University, her JD from Syracuse University College of Law, and her associate degree from Simmons Institute of Funeral Service in Syracuse. Lily is currently the program director of Worsham College and works at McMurrow Funeral Chapel in Libertyville, Illinois. She is also the chair of the American Board of Funeral Service Education Committee on Accreditation. We're so happy to have you, Lily.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Hello, everyone. I am sorry that you all are digging out from all that snow. I have been watching from afar. I'm over here kind of closer to Chicago, but my heart goes out to you all. I lived in Honeoye Falls for several years while I was attending law school in Syracuse, so I am well versed in kind of lake effect snow, and I don't think people truly understand that until they live in New York. I'm so happy to be here this afternoon. Please, if there are any questions while we're going through, you can either put them into the chat and Kelly will make sure I get to answer them, or we can save some time at the end as well too. A little bit about this presentation and why I'm here and why I'm going to talk about this is I have kind of a unique perspective in the sense that I run Worsham College Mortuary Science, and if you're not familiar with that school, we are located outside of Chicago, and we are one of the larger kind of mortuary science programs in the country. Last year, we actually graduated more students than any other program. So in that role as program director, I really get to meet and see all of our students. I also teach as well too. I teach business law and mortuary law, so not only do I get to see them kind of walking through the hallways and kind of online, but I also am their instructor as well too. So I get to know them and kind of get to know what they're thinking and what their expectations are. In addition to that, like many of you as well, I work at a family-run funeral home where I have right now 4 different generations working under one rooftop. And let's just say it can be a challenge. And we need more people. And so like many of you on this webinar right now are probably wondering, where are the people? Where are my next generation of funeral directors? How do I attract them? How do I keep them? And that's really what I want to talk about today, because I think there's some information that will be really beneficial to you in running your business. So specifically what we're going to talk about today is going to be, how do we hire and retain this younger generation of employees? We're going to specifically talk about the millennials and Generation Z. So with that, let's get started. And again, if you have questions, just let me know. Okay, we're going to start with framing the issue because I think it's important. Who is your new director? They are the millennials. And I'm going to tell you, before you get too angry at me and roll your eyes, I am about as old as you can possibly be to be considered a millennial. So you can call me an elder millennial, a geriatric millennial, whatever you like. We are born between the years of 1981 and represent more than 1/4 of the nation's population. We range in age from about 24 to 40, and that's going to be in 2021. And we now number over 87 million. We surpassed the baby boomers that are about 76 million, and that's going to be your age range of 54 to 73. Typically in a funeral home right now, you're seeing kind of the boomers. You've got Gen X, you've got your millennials, and then you've also got your Gen Z that's kind of slowly moving up into the workforce as well. Just to put in perspective, by the year 2025, your millennials will be making up over 75% of the workforce. So when you think about that kind of just in a numbers way, we're here to stay. So before you kind of look at us and go, oh my gosh, and if you're kind of curious the difference between a millennial and a Generation Z, I know it can be very confusing. Us millennials, we are the ones that live in our parents' basement and eat avocado toast, and Gen Z, those are the ones that have found the Tide Pods and are just snacking on those, kind of wondering like how to live their lives. And that's kind of what you think about when you think about our millennials and Gen Z. Obviously, I'm kidding. And as we kind of go through this presentation, please know I will be speaking kind of generally about each generation and kind of the expectations and things like that. So I know there will be workers out there that are going, well, that doesn't quite describe me, or that doesn't quite describe the situation. Please know these are all just generalities, but kind of with the understanding to get you where you need to be to work with this new generation. I think it's important to spend just a moment on a demographic comparison. To put this in perspective, as I mentioned before, there are 76 million baby boomers. 72% of them are white, so very kind of homogeneous when we think about what that looks like. Let's now shift over to the millennial generation. I want to I can't say this any more clearly than diversity defines the millennial generation. Millennials are an even larger group. There's 87 million of us, but much more diverse. Only 56% of them are white. And I think it's just important to note that, because I think when we're thinking about who makes up this population, it's important to look at the numbers. I also need to spend a little bit of time talking about women in the workplace. Right now, 57% of women participate in the labor force. So that means, you know, most women are now working in just kind of in general. Of that, and this I think is the important statistic right here, of that 57% of women working, 70% have children under the age of 18. So for example, I fit that criteria almost perfectly. I participate in the labor force. I have 2 children ages 8 and 11. And I think that it's important because most households right now are either a single parent household, or even if 2 parents or 2 people are working, most people are working. So there is not that kind of idea where one person is at home and that the schedules kind of matter. And I'm saying this because in our field in particular, we've kind of always operated under this idea that we have kind of 24/7, 7 days a week. And please know that I do understand that funeral service does run that way. But we have to start to think about when we have 70% of our women that are working right now have little kids or kids under the age of 18. That means we've got pickups, drop-offs, schools, plays. For example, just last night, what unbeknownst to me, I feel like in the last few minutes, I've had 3 concerts to go to in the last 2 weeks. I only have 2 children. Why do I have so many concerts to go to? And we have to be there. We have to participate. Now, maybe we can't go to every single one of them, but we have to be mindful of those types of schedules. Also, I was talking to a friend of mine. Her daughter has not had a full week of school the entire month of February. That child cannot stay home like they used to in the 1980s. You cannot give them a bag of popcorn and turn on the TV and say, good luck to you. There's just a different way of being. So this idea that scheduling matters is really important to think about. I end on this one, which is the American Board. The American Board of Funeral Service Education collects data, and we're going to go through some of that data as well during this webinar. But I think it's important to note that 70% of your graduates in 2021 from all mortuary science programs are female, and that number continues to rise. We at Worsham College have an online program and also an on-campus program. Our most recent cohort, which just started in September for online, was 85% women. That is not abnormal. We're finding that also with the different modalities, especially offering online education, more and more women are coming into the field because it gives them that ability to still work and at the same time attend school. So you're starting to see that demographic, or that kind of that shift a little bit. I imagine that we're probably getting around the peak of where that is, but I don't think this is going to change anytime soon as far as the number of women entering. We actually had last year, Arapahoe College out in Colorado graduated an entirely all-female class, 100% women. That's not unique. So I really think it's important to note, and I put this together for you because I want you to see that we now have women in the workplace, these women have children, and beyond that, we don't have the same access to kind of family to take care of kids like there have been in past decades and things like that. You have a much more mobile family unit. And when you think about that, we don't have grandma down the street. We don't have the auntie that's living right there to be able to take care of the children. So that's going to fall on your employees. Let's jump into the American Board of Funeral Service Education graduate data. Again, I want to give you this information because I think before we kind of jump into, you know, why do people act the way that they do, or why are things going on in the funeral home the way that they are, I think it's really important to understand who's graduating from mortuary science schools today, because I think once we understand that, it's easier to start to frame out where the employees are. If we look at our number in 2021, there were 1,546 graduates. And when I say graduates, that's from all 56 accredited mortuary science programs across the country. That's pretty consistent. If we look in 2019, we were right a little over 1,500 as well. That number is pretty consistent. I'll show you a historical overview in just a moment. I want to pull out a couple interesting details that I found fascinating. 70% are female, 10% are children of licensees. Historically, when we think about funeral service, we've always kind of thought of it as, you know, the sons and daughters going into the field. This is not the case anymore. 10%. And if we look in 2019, it was 15%. This number continues to decline. Again, I don't think it'll get much lower than that 10%, but that's kind of a big shift when we think about that, who our population is that's attending mortuary school. Our next statistic, and we look at, is that only about 20% of all graduates in the country were white males. That will include some children of licensees as well. So when you think about that, we had 314 white males in the entire country graduate last year. And I put this fact up there because I think it's important, because when I started here at Worsham many years ago, I'd get a lot of phone calls. I need a guy. And I need him to work in my demographics, or my geography is what they would say, my geography. The lawyer inside of me would say, oh, that is so illegal, please stop saying that. But I also understood what they were saying, and it was like, that person doesn't necessarily exist anymore. That is such a small needle in a haystack. I really think you need to think bigger about who is out there and expand out who that employee looks like. Because I'm going to tell you what, because I get that question, well, I mean, I can't hire a woman. Can they lift? And the answer is yes, they can, with training, with the different types of supports that are out there right now. Absolutely. And I will tell you, there's a lot of men out there right now that can't lift either. So before we just kind of frame that out, I think it's important to just step back and look at that. Here's your historical data. I want you just to see that our number has been pretty consistent. So when we look at, oh my gosh, we don't have anybody to hire. There's not enough people coming out of mortuary school. They're not graduating. They're not this. The number of graduates has been fairly consistent when we look at from the 1970s all the way up till today. We've been right around that number, 1,500, give or take. I point out the little uptick in 1995. That's when the associate degree became the kind of standard credential for mortuary science. So we start to see that becoming like, oh my gosh, I better get in before I have to get that degree. So that's when that shift kind of really happened. So again, I want to just point out that it's not necessarily a lack of graduates that we're seeing. It's going to be something a little bit different. And I think that's where we'll shift into the retention issue as we get further into this webinar as well, too. I want to point out a couple things about our students that we're finding more and more. The level of education that our students have prior to entering mortuary school continues to rise. If we look at this number up here, 58% of our students have 2 or more years of college. 22% of our students have a bachelor's degree or higher, which is great. I mean, I think that with education comes experience and comes knowledge, but it also comes with debt. I point this out because your students and your new employees, and maybe even the employees that you have right now, most all of them have some type of real debt. And this is not when you just from mortuary science school. This is from college, from beyond that. I joke with the students here that, you know, I have a mortgage payment for my brain for law school, and I'm still paying off those debts. So this idea that your employees are coming in, you have to factor that in when we start to think about what I think is might be one of the bigger issues that I hope you all listen and kind of think about, which is compensation. The students these days are not necessarily coming out with money being the #1 factor that they are looking for. However, they need to make a living wage. And a living wage has to kind of consider the debts that they are carrying with them as well. Most all students have some type of debt, and I think it's important to look at that. The other thing that I recommend when we're looking at something like compensation specifically is, when is the last time you looked at what it costs to live in your area? What does housing cost? By that, I mean, what is rent? What do groceries cost right now? Gas, how far away do they have to kind of drive each and every day? Do you have company vehicles that they're able to use? What about cell phones, internet, all of those different things? You should really take a step back and run the numbers for your area, because I can't sit here and tell you what your exact specific salary should be for your new employees, because geography matters. And cost of living matters, all of those different things. But I'm going to tell you that you need to really look at those numbers, because while Well, salary is not the number one determinative factor for our generation and kind of the younger people coming in. It's really important because they need to be able to move on from just eating macaroni and cheese to being able to put some money away and actually save. And I just point that out because a lot of the new employees are coming to you with that debt. Just recently, we had a new job posting that was looking for a new apprentice, and they posted it on our jobs board, and they wanted to pay $16 an hour. I'm going to tell you right now that is not going to garner kind of the enthusiasm that you think it might if you are posting a job for $16 an hour for an apprentice. Now, if that $16 an hour includes maybe housing, clothing, all sorts of other perks, possibly. But we need to start to think about that. The number of times I'm hearing people say to me now that I could work at Target for around the same and get discounts on the things I want to buy, that's becoming a thing. And I think it's really important whenever I start to hear these kind of things that our students are starting to kind of say to each other, and if they're saying things like, I could work at Chick-fil-A, I could work at Target, what they're saying to you is that's not enough for me to live on. So just something to consider when you're looking at that kind of compensation package that you're putting together. And again, I think it's important that you don't just pull a number out of the sky, that you really have kind of a number in mind as far as what it is that you can afford and what it is that you can actually offer this next generation. The next slide that I think is really important to spend a little bit of time on is work experience. About 50% of your students have worked before entering school. What that means is actually kind of shocking on the reverse side of that, which means 50% of your students have not worked before entering school. I say it like this. They have not folded clothes at the mall. They have not, waited tables at a restaurant. They have not scooped ice cream at the ice cream store or any of those jobs. And why this is really important that I think is you learn consequences, resilience, determination. You learn customer service skills, a lot of those things on the job. Many of the people on this call will say, well, I've had a job since I was a teenager. And that's great, but you're starting to see more and more individuals coming in that did not have that. And I'll tell you kind of the theory behind that, I believe, is that a lot of parents wanted their kids to be kids. So they thought, you know what, let them enjoy their childhood, which isn't a bad thing. But what that means is when you think about that, they've been in school their whole lives, right? Then they're coming out and then you want them to be a professional and ready to go and hit the ground running, customer service skills, all of the above. And they're not going to be there. They're going to be a little bit green, if not maybe even greener than green. Doesn't mean they can't learn. It just means that I think understanding that you're going to need to take a little bit more time with them on onboarding and discussion is important to know. The other statistic that I find fascinating is 68% of our students have worked in funeral service related positions while in school. And let's just make our numbers round for our purposes here. Just round it up. That means 30% of your students that are coming out of mortuary schools right now have never stepped foot in a funeral home. That is problematic in I think a lot of different ways. Worsham is a little bit different. We have a lot of different things in place where our students are kind of forced into funeral homes. But what this really means is that some of them don't have a real true understanding of what the job is about. Because it's one thing to hear about getting up in the middle of the night and yeah, I can do that. And then when the phone actually rings at 2 in the morning, it's a very different feeling. And I think most of you all can understand that, or to understand what an arrangement conference is kind of in a format where it's like, these are the things that you're going to do. And if you've watched a video on it, maybe some schools, they watch a video on it, but it's a very different thing to actually sit in front of another family or to sit in front of another person and to say the words and to understand how the forms and the words and how you have to build rapport with the families that you're serving. It's a lot to take on. I point this out because, again, the students are hearing the words, right? They're hearing it, they're learning it, they're putting those pieces together, but the actual application of it is coming when they're with you. And this is very similar to what happens in law school as well too. So there's not anything necessarily wrong with the model. What it just means is that when you graduate from law school, I joke, like you learn how not to do things, right? How not to write a contract because you're studying cases that things went wrong. But civil procedure, all these different things, you don't actually work with or use the forms or work with clients until you graduate and pass the bar exam. It's very similar in this space too. So kind of being mindful of that these students are going to need more help kind of with the onboarding process is very important. I'm going to spend just a moment on hiring because I think it's important for us to think about this. I put my little slide up there. I have 2 daughters, as I mentioned. I put the 3 little pigs up there, and you can build your house however you want, right? It can be with straw, sticks, or bricks. My recommendation, not even the lawyer in me, I promise, just me in general, is telling you, build your house with bricks. And what do I mean by that? Before you start looking for a candidate, get your house in order. And what I mean by that is you need an employee handbook. And you should put all of your company policies in there. This does not need to be a 50-page document, but what it does need to be is, to me, your non-negotiables. What are the things that matter to you and your kind of funeral home most? It could be your top 10, but it needs to be written down. I highly recommend putting in dress code. I highly recommend putting in things that you think. This is my best advice. When you're writing a handbook or you're putting in new policies, it's a living document, so you should be reviewing it all the time and adding things in. Start with this. If you believe that it is common sense and everyone should know this, it's not. Your employees will absolutely befuddle you. And if you just write it down and go, you know what, it's not common sense. And I'm joking a little bit, but I have found that if you look at it and go, this should be obvious, it needs to go in your handbook. And that's really where you can start at your baseline of that. The other thing I'm going to mention is your job description. It should have some depth to it, not just funeral director needed, because I'm going to tell you right now, you're in competition because 94% of our students are finding jobs right away. So this is not the same situation of even 5-10 years ago, 10 years ago, more likely, where there were not enough jobs and a lot of people. Right now, we've got more students, or sorry, we've got more jobs than we have students. So your job description has to matter. If you are trying to sell your rural community to a student and you just say funeral director needed, no one is going to come there because they don't understand what you're even offering. A couple things that I recommend, put in your expectations. What are your requirements? Spell out the skills that matter the most to you and outline the day-to-day duties. I do another presentation where we talk about kind of this in more depth as far as what should go in a handbook and a job description. I won't do that at this webinar for you, but I think it's important that you know that just like when you get a bad resume and you look at it and go, and you kind of throw it away, if your job description is boring and has nothing interesting in it, that's exactly what people are going to do too, because they're looking at more than just salary. They're looking at what is the feel of the company? What is the feel of what you're doing? So I want you just to spend a little bit of time thinking about that. I know that's not fun, believe me. Writing policies, writing procedures, writing job descriptions, like after a long day of working with families, and a lot of you on this webinar, I'm sure, have been working nonstop, pretty much since the pandemic, and you just need help. The last thing you really want to do is start to sit down and think about, gosh, what are the beautiful things about where I live, right? But those things really do matter. So you putting in a little bit of that time and effort, and we'll start to talk about why those two things come together when we think about this newer generation as well too. But that's kind of my pitch to you, just to spend a little bit of time on that job description. I've noticed also, this is a newer thing I've noticed, a lot of funeral homes have started using companies to start helping them to hire employees and things like that. Be leery of that in just a little bit, because what I'm noticing is that they're doing the exact same job post, they're just changing your funeral home name. So if I'm a prospective employee and I see they're all the exact same thing, why would I choose you over another one? So if you're using a company, that's great, and you're looking for recruiting new talent, just make sure you talk to them and say, look, we need to stand out. We need to talk about who we are, why we matter, because that's what's going to make that difference. Again, just something that I noticed on our jobs board when I started to see that we have 4 or 5 of the exact same looking job posts. How do you think that looks to your prospective employees as well too? So something to think about as well. All right, let's jump into working with this younger generation. My goodness, the eye rolls can start. What is wrong with this generation today? I say that jokingly because we're about to go right into it and talk about it. So who are they? They are the me generation. Time magazine has us as they're lazy, entitled narcissists who still live with their parents. And that's, I'm going to tell you, I think that's an overgeneralization. I think that once you understand kind of like the background of this generation, you'll start to understand kind of where they're coming from and what they're looking for, because I don't think it's that simple. Let's talk about it. We are the baby on board generation. If you've ever seen those little bumper stickers in the back of your window, we are the generation for it. We are more protected than any other generation. We are the car seat generation. As I told you, I'm kind of on that upper edge. I think if you are a little bit older than I am, you might have been that seat where they had no seat belts and you just used your parents, just used the arm like across you as like the barrier to make sure you didn't fly through the windows. I'm the age group where we had the car seat, but it was kind of newer. It was kind of more of like, if you want to fast forward to my youngest sister, that was a definite. Now I want to put this in perspective to you, because when you think about it, that's where that started in the 80s, right? Fast forward to right now, you have 10-year-olds still in car seats because it was seen and found that this is a safety issue. So until you hit a certain weight or height, you have children at ages like 9, 10 sitting in car seats. It's not a negative or a bad thing, but it starts to kind of put these parameters. When I was that age, I was fighting for the front seat, you know, with my sisters going, no, it's my turn, my week. They don't sit in the front seat anymore. So this idea of protection, this idea of like safety is a real thing. Our helicopter parents overscheduled. We are the generation of minivans. And here's why I believe it, because it was open the door. You're kicking one kid out to get to ballet class while the kid from lacrosse is getting inside. You are driving from thing to thing to thing. You have multi calendars for each of your children. And the idea is you need to be involved in extracurricular events. So when I say to you, I look at that from, you know, growing up like that to right now, again, 2 children, each one has their own calendar that are color coded. And again, this is in addition to running a funeral home, you know, running a college, and we've got 2 kids. I've got martial arts. That's no one told me how much it goes into that. My goodness, so many belts, so many practices. I've got that. I've got, you know, improv classes. We've got all these different things because you want your kids to be involved and do these things, but that takes time and scheduling. And what this means though is when you think about it, the kids that grew up this way, their days are structured. We get up at a certain time, the alarm goes off. Breakfast is at a certain time, bathroom breaks, snack breaks, what time is homework? And remember, 50% of your students have never worked before. So they come out to you and the first thing they're asking is there a snack time? When do we have snack? Is there a bathroom break? Like, what time do we end? And you're looking at it going, what are you talking about? We work till the work is done. But again, they're coming from this idea where their color-coded schedule literally tells them everything they're supposed to be doing in a day. They come out to you, and many funeral homes are not structured that same way. So that's a hard transition for a lot of your new employees. They're also the generation of the economic recession. They saw people, their parents lose their stocks, lose their jobs, lose kind of their stability. If you think about it like this, grandparents, kind of our silent generation, one above the boomers, or kind of like the upper age of the boomers, many of them stayed at the same exact job for their entire lives. And the idea was that the company takes care of you. We are a family. We will be there for you. If you worked for General Motors for your entire life, General Motors was going to give you a better life and a pension, all of those different things. Fast forward to the next generation. Now you've got your kind of real boomer generation. What do you think it was like at the dinner table when moms and dads are coming home and they've lost their jobs? And do you think they're talking about the company in a way that's like, haha, they really treated us like family, right? Absolutely not. That's really kind of planting the seeds into this younger generation that be careful. So even when we say things like in the funeral home, how often do we say that? We're a family here. We're a family here. There's suspicion to that, especially from that younger generation, because they're looking at you going, oh, okay, what does that mean to you? You know, how long before you kind of like drop me? And if you look at the data, millennials are jumping from job to job every 18 months or so. And this is across all professions. And I want to be very clear about that. The things that I'm sharing with you right now are being seen across the country in all sectors. It is not unique to funeral service. So do not feel bad. You know, every industry is having trouble right now finding and retaining people. We're also the generation of Columbine and 9/11. I was in high school when Columbine happened. That was the first real school shooting. When you think about something like that, the breach of somewhere that has always been safe. Last year, to put this in perspective, there were 57 school shootings. Our kids now are doing fire drills and active shooter drills as if that is commonplace. That changes how you start to view the world and view that idea of safety and everything like that. Also, this idea of reward-based participation trophies, we are your snowflake generation. But before you start going, see, yes, you are entitled and you have everything you want. I want you to imagine soccer, kindergarten, and I want you to think about all the little kids that are playing. It was not the 5 and 6 year olds that were going, where is my trophy? I want my award. It was the parents saying to the coaches, hey, my Sally's just as good as Johnny. Why aren't they being recognized? Everybody has value. Everybody should be recognized. And so what you start to see is this idea that those trophies were coming from you, from the parents, from the people that were saying, yes, everybody should be treated equally and get something in recognition. And this goes in many different ways. I will tell you that I'm sure this surprises none of you at some points, but I was very nerdy growing up, and I loved school. So I did win the awards award for getting the most possible awards in middle school. That is not a real thing and should not be a real thing. I did not ask for that. But beyond that, I would like to also say on that same exact day, I also played field hockey and softball. I was much better in field hockey than I was in softball. Softball, I won the Band-Aid award for the person injured the most on the team. Do you think that I was like, how dare they not recognize me? No, I would absolutely love to just have let that fly right under the radar. No attention necessary on that. But we've almost gotten to that point where if you think about it, that's me growing up. So fast forward to that, and then we put that in. This idea that there's an expectation that you are recognized for participation, it's ingrained in them. It is not a bad thing. It's just part of how they grew up. It's this expectation that they're going to be recognized for that. Like visual examples, less text. What does that mean? The best way that I can kind of explain that to you is if you think about it, millennials are the generation of the drive-through in the sense of the value meals. I want a number 2, I want this. And the biggest question we had was, were we going to supersize that or not? And think about the way that they even digest information now. When you look at millennials and Generation Z, it is all about kind of what can I do in 140 characters? What is kind of the core of it? If you look at kind of even the fact that the younger generation is using Instagram versus Facebook. Instagram is all about the pictures and the visual. I point this out to you because something as simple as a dress code policy. How would I work on that? What would I do? Because I get that question a lot. Oh, these kids these days, they don't know how to dress, or they're not reading the dress code policy. Well, they are, but when they read something like pants, in their brains, they're going, oh, are those like, can I wear floral colored pants? Can I wear capri pants? Can I wear pleated pants? Can I wear, it's endless. Do they need a flat front pants? When we read the word pants, they think of any possible pants that could be there. If you give them a visual, a picture of exactly how you want them to dress, that gives them something to mirror and it gives them something to look at. What I recommend is putting in a couple, make almost like a lookbook for them, because they can point at it and go, I can make that, I can do that. This DIY spirit of that generation, they can go and find those pieces. But if you just say to them, we want you to be professional, or, a suit can mean a lot of different things. And that's what I'm saying to you. This idea that, well, that should be common sense. Is it though? And I'll give you an example. We had a student, we kind of do these field trips for our students, and we go out to cemeteries and things like that because we want them to have these experiences. So I said, please dress professionally. And as I told you, I learn as I go. So I say, please dress professionally, because in my mind, that should be very clear. I go to class and I see a young lady and she is wearing flip-flops. And I look down, and first, immediately my first thought is, she has done this to be kind of, difficult, right? She wants to push the boundaries because she doesn't want to kind of follow the rules. So I pull her aside and again, sarcastically, I look at her and I go, those are great shoes. And in that moment right there, her face lit up and she looked down and she goes, oh my gosh, do you like them? Do you really like them? And between you and me, no, I did not like them. I was like, what? And she goes, these are my fancy flip-flops. And she's showing them off. And they were bedazzled and they were fancy and they had a heel. And I thought, oh my gosh, she just didn't know. It wasn't that she was being willful or malicious or anything like that. She just didn't know. And it was very eye-opening to me because she thought she was doing the right thing. Fast forward to, we actually did when convention was in Chicago, I sent all of our students there and I talked to them about professional dress. And this time I learned a little bit, so I talked to them about, what's appropriate, everything like that. I had one young lady and she goes, well, can I show you what I'm thinking of wearing? And I said, absolutely, love to, please do. And the first thing that she showed me was honestly something that looked like she might be going to kind of model at a car show. She looked beautiful, but really wasn't the idea of professionalism that I had been kind of trying to get them towards. And I kind of talked to her about it and I explained to her, kind of the look and the feel and all those different things. And I showed her pictures. She came dressed beautifully to convention. Lovely suit that she was able to find at Target. So it wasn't anything that we had to go spend a ton of money on this, but it took the time and the effort, because when you think about it, where are they seeing their examples of professionalism right now? Even if we look at TV and everything like that, gone are the days where we're really able to model after that. Many of these individuals, their parents are not working kind of professional jobs where they are seeing and modeling that behavior. So it comes from you. It comes from our kind of academics, people that are working in the field. That's where they're going to learn. So before you're kind of dismissive and rolling your eyes and going, oh my gosh, they should know better, take that moment. Now, I want everyone to hear this next part of the sentence as well too. If you give them that advice and you tell them what to do and then they continue not to do it, they are a bad employee. That doesn't matter what generation they're from. The idea here is that they need to be able to learn and grow. If they're not doing that, they're a bad employee. But if they are, and the next time they come and they're not wearing flip-flops and they've got really nice, sturdy, good shoes, that's learning. That's the growth that you're looking for. That's onboarding that we're talking about. A low tolerance for boredom. Most of that is because they've had their phones and they've been able to kind of have everything accessible from the moment essentially they were born. We are, if you think about it, right now, all of our students and all of our young people have not known the world without internet. That's a crazy thought when you think about that. So even being able to, when I was a kid, you had to wait on a weekly basis to see a TV show. Now you don't. And I don't think this low tolerance for boredom is just something for our young generation. I'm seeing it even in the older generation as well too. Before we used to have to wait a really long time to even listen to a song. Now we get very frustrated if we have to wait more than like 2 seconds for something to load. So this idea of low tolerance for boredom, I see that permeating all generations as well. Let's talk about the values of our millennials here. They want work-life balance. This is professional relationships, travel, time to pursue their outside interests. They want family time and flexibility. They want to work smarter, not harder. And I kind of put up like a little joke schedule for you all here too, because we have our boomers that are like 9 to 5. You can, and again, I know that funeral service is not 9 to 5 or any type of thing like that, but for our boomers, it's almost like 24/7, right? Our millennials are 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., 2 p.m. to 12 a.m., all over the place. And this goes back to this idea that they've had kind of this flexibility in their schedules as far as being able to get work done when they want to. I point this out because work-life balance, when a student said that to me, I remember distinctly feeling like, what are you talking about work-life balance? You have just graduated. You need to work, right? Like I remember feeling that way. But then I also thought to myself, what does that even mean? When we say work-life balance, it's become a very popular term. What does that actually mean? What do people look for? And I started to think this, my idea of work-life balance is probably very different than most everybody else on this call, because work-life balance means something different to different people, especially depending on where you are in life. A couple examples. We have this gentleman who works up in Wisconsin right now. He is a fantastic employee. The funeral home loves him, but he has, I always say this wrong and I apologize, but he is really into costumes and makeup and all this stuff, and actually goes to Children's Hospital dressed, kind of dressed as different characters from Star Wars and like different movies and things like that, kind of more like science fiction type things. He loves it. He loves going to these children's hospitals. He does that. He goes to libraries. He does kind of different things like that. And guess what? The funeral home kind of looked at their schedule and said, okay, we can make this work. It wasn't every weekend. It doesn't mean you come in late. It doesn't mean that you make the schedule up as you want to. There was another individual really, really wanted to participate in community theater. And look, it was a window in time. He was able to have this kind of role. He was so excited. He is posting on Facebook about that, but he's also posting about how great his employer is. Got done with the play, did all of that. The funeral home actually sponsored part of the play. He is one of their best and highest grossing employees, and loves it there because he was given that ability to do something that they love. Funeral service, we talk about it being a way of life. And I don't know if that's always the best way for us to kind of think about it and talk about it, because not everybody's looking for a way of life. And before you kind of look at it and go, wait a minute, we can still care and we can give a lot of value and we can be there for our families that we serve. But if you think about it, and we've got right now, most of our students coming in without that understanding of the work that we do, we have to build that into them. We have to build in this idea of what it means to be part of that community. The other thing about working smarter, not harder, a lot of this comes down to what are your non-negotiables. One of the things that I found, we have students that will live at funeral homes. We had one student that was living at a funeral home and he was very upset because he had to be on phones 24/7. Someone's got to be on the funeral home, answer the phones 24/7, no questions asked. And they're looking at it going, oh my gosh, there's so many answering services. We can do this, we can do that. Why don't we use any of this technology? And the student was getting very frustrated with this because it felt like kind of something that was put on them. And I'm going to say it like this. They felt like the response was, we've always done it that way. And they were looking at it going, but why? And the funeral director is going, because I said so, right? You might have had these conversations with your children. You might have had these conversations with employees. And I said to the funeral director, because of course the funeral director calls me and says, you know, what's wrong with these students today? They don't want to work. They don't value the work that we do. And I said, have you explained to them why? Have you explained to them why it is that you want them to answer the phone? Well, they should know why they need to answer the phone. That's part of the job. I said, but why? Why don't you use ASD or any of the other kind of, you know, answering the phones? Why? And they said, well, because not only is it a part of our tradition, but we say we're there for the family 24/7. So when someone calls, they get us on the phone. They get someone from our family, someone from our funeral home, and we will be with them from start to finish. There is nobody else that comes in. I said, have you told the student that? Have you explained that? And I go, no. We went back, told that student that exact same story, and guess what? The student understood, because that makes sense. That story, that idea of what it means to be a funeral director, that value that they're getting from it, that they're giving back, and that they're part of something, that mattered. So you can start to restructure that narrative. It's not about changing your values. It's not about changing the way that you do everything. It's of changing how you communicate it and the value of what it is. Because otherwise they're going to go, why bother? Why? So again, something like this work-life balance, to me, easiest thing to do, ask the question, what does work-life balance mean to you? What does that mean? I think you'll be surprised by the answer. Rarely is it going to be, I actually don't want to work. Don't feel like coming in. If anything, they might say something like, you know what, I'd really love to coach my daughter's softball team. You know, we have that right now at the office. Someone came in and said they're supposed to work at the lab. And they go, this really is important to me. Is there any way for like the next, like, you know, 6 weeks, I can have that one day off to go coach softball? Guess what? I can make that happen. I can figure it out. And there's something to that as well, too. I'm going to spend just one more second on this as well, is that guess what? If you do that, the times that you do need that person, let's say something really does go crazy at work and you've given them that space to do what they need to do, that time that you need them on a Thursday because it's really crazy at work, they're going to say yes, but you've built that into them. You've built that kind of trust there. The millennials, they do need that recognition and appreciation. I'll tell you what, we do love making sure that we're known and everything like that. This to me is going to be your feedback, such as small rewards, titles, non-monetary rewards as well too. What this means is acknowledging their impact, acknowledging that they've done a good job. You've got to be able to see that for them. I love this tweet right here that says, my daughter's looking for a summer job. She's a millennial, so she's hoping to find part-time work as a CEO. It's okay to laugh at that. The idea here is that this idea, when you think about your employees and what they need and what they want to feel good is they want to be making a difference. They want to be part of a team. So recognizing and appreciating what they're contributing really does matter. This idea of no news is good news has to be put aside for the younger generation. They want to be acknowledged for their impact. I also have for my boomers and my millennials up here too. Boomers, if you didn't want it that way, you should have done it yourself. Where our millennials are like, do you like my work? Which part did you like the best? Do you like it a little or a lot? I put this up here because the millennials are looking for guidance. They're looking for your approval. So when they're coming to you, that's what they're looking for. This idea of recognition and appreciation goes right along with approval. Coaching and mentorship. Millennials want to develop their skills and know how they're progressing. The best way I can say this is progress reports. They've been given progress reports since the time they were little children. By that I mean like 2 years old. Are they meeting do they know their colors? Do they know their numbers? Where are they progressing? That's been part of their life for the entire time. So this doesn't go away when they come out to you. So this idea that it's like, well, it's fine. They don't know that. They're not mind readers. They want to know that they're kind of that they're meeting your expectations. And they're going to make mistakes, a lot of them, and you need to correct those. So again, I also know what it's like to run a business, and I also know what it's like to have a funeral home where, you know, you have the best intentions of having that meeting with them, and then that is honestly always the day that the phone is ringing off the hook. That's fine, but don't push it off. Don't kind of decide, we'll do this later. And progress reports and kind of having this idea of meeting with you can be as simple as going to coffee. It can be as simple as going to lunch every once in a while. I was so shocked that one of our younger employees actually wanted to like hang out with me. And by hang out, I mean like literally have coffee with me and just talk. I thought, why? And I realized it's because they're looking to develop their skills. They're looking to understand what the job is, and they want to be you. So that's really important to kind of understand it. What are their challenges? They often resent being handed busy work. So take the time to explain how their work will lead to specific results. This goes back to this exact thing that I was talking about with that gentleman who didn't want to stay there to answer the phones, right? Explain the why to them. Another kind of student was doing kind of a similar thing where she was really upset because she had to stuff envelopes. She's like, oh, this busy work is absolutely terrible. I hate it so much. She's very upset about this. I've gone to school, and you'll hear this, right? I'm sure some people on this call will say, I've heard this before. You know, I didn't go to school to stuff envelopes, or you can change it to vacuum the floors, to change garbage, to fill in blank, right? So I said to her, I was like, well, what are you doing? You know, why are you stuffing? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just a terrible job. Nobody else wants to do it. So actually on this one, I knew the funeral home. So I called the funeral director and I said, hey, you know what? I think you need to take a step back and just talk to the student. So fast forward, they go and talk to the student and they say, look, we're putting you in charge of this project. And this project is we're sending out kind of our memory cards to the families that we've served at about like the 6-month mark, because we know for a lot of families that is 6 months and about around a year, they really struggle. They really miss their loved one. And a lot of those kind of family members and friends that kind of were right around them in the beginning, they've gone away. And so we just want them to know that we haven't forgotten their loved one. That same student comes back and she is to the entire class, you'll never believe what I get to do. I'm in charge of this project where we are kind of sending out cards to the family members and telling them that we're thinking of them. She was so proud of that work. Do you know what she's still doing? She's still stuffing envelopes. It's the exact same thing. It's just how we talk about it. You know, and I did this presentation for another group, and you know, someone said, well, I'm going to try this. I don't believe you, but I'm going to try it, because they had trouble getting someone to like light the candles in one of their rooms because they just didn't see the value in it. And they thought, well, it seems like busy work. Well, they explained that, you know, each one of these candles represented a memory that someone had posted on their web page. And so it was kind of like this visual representation for the families when they came in. Guess what? That person, that employee now loves doing that, because each one of those candles represents something. Actually, the funeral director called me and said, I didn't believe you. I really did not think this would work. And they just said, I've never had a problem again with them lighting the candles. So it's not about changing what you do. It's about kind of making sure that they understand the why behind it. There's also a lot of different modalities and ways. What does this mean? If you don't like getting a text message, then tell them you don't like getting a text message. If you expect them to pick up the phone when you call, they probably are not going to do that. And again, I look at it like this. The best way I can describe it to you is this. You might call me, and I am a funeral director. I understand the importance of answering the phone. I will look at it and go, ooh, I don't know about that. I'm going to definitely let it go to voicemail. It's going to take me a little while to listen to that voicemail. I have a sister that's 2 years younger than I am, 2.5 years younger. She will let it go to voicemail, and you will get to her voicemail and it's already full. So you can't even leave a voicemail. Fast forward to my youngest sister, who's 5 years younger. She doesn't even have a voicemail set up. It's just a generational change as far as how we are communicating. So if there's an expectation that you want to hear their voice and hear how sick they are if they're not coming in, and you want to hear it, you need to tell them that, because otherwise the expectation is that they're going to be able to text you with that information. You get to control your policies. You just have to articulate them to your employees. I love this one because I've got my boomer. Hi, Alan, how are you? Just want to get in touch. Let me know and be a good time to meet for your convenience. Just set something up on your calendar. Best, Joe. Versus our millennials. Hey, when can we meet? Hand clap, turtle emoji, pizza emoji, 100%, TTYL. And I love this because my husband is a Gen X, so he's a couple years older than I am, and we have a Gen Z that works with us as well too. So he gets a text from our funeral director, and he just looks at it, just looks at it, and he just shows it to me. He's like, "Is this good or bad?" Like, I don't know. He's like, "It's like hieroglyphics." And so the idea, and I look at it, I go, "Oh no, she's fine. Everything is good." It's just a different way. Set the tone of how you want your communication to go. I also have for my millennials out there, thank you. This is my boomers. Thank you for calling to say that you have faxed an Excel spreadsheet back to me with your handwritten notes on it. So you boomers out there, you're not exactly not bringing us challenges as well when we work with you in technology. As far as motivation goes, flexibility. I'm going to put up the kind of the three things I want you to think about: flexibility, clarity, and encouragement and regular feedback. So again, the second time that I'm kind of bringing up this encouragement piece, they want to be you. They want to see that they can make that pathway. Clarity, to me, what that means is a clear career path. This does not mean that you decide what their career path is for them. You will terrify a young employee when you tell them this could all be yours. They don't want it. That they do not want that. That will stress them out, just the idea of that. And if you think about it, they're still learning who they are and what they want. So this idea that they need to kind of have a pathway, it's something you check in with them and think about yourselves. When you were kind of new employees, are you doing exactly what you thought you would be doing 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Don't you grow and change? Do you spend more time maybe in the front of the house versus the back of the house? Did you think you'd start one place and end up in the other? Do you do everything and love it? I'm sure your kind of career path has changed, and it's not just about the titles, it's about kind of that development. The idea with flexibility, look at your schedules. What is it that you can and cannot do? I really think it's important that we think about having a conversation about that. To me, what that really means is talk about it. So for example, even something as simple as this, when I am doing a webinar like this, or if I'm traveling or anything like that, I talk to my staff and I say, look, if I go and do this, that means it's more work for you all to do something else. So what is the give and take on that so that we have this kind of cohesive work environment? Flexibility matters to them. And a millennial who accepts constructive criticism, now there's something you don't see very often. I'm going to end here with my top 10 tips for working with millennials. So I'm going to put all 10 up there so you can see them. And I do believe this session is being recorded, so you are able to kind of look at these and kind of have any questions that you might have. And again, if there are things you want to talk about after the fact, please let me know. My top 10 tips are this: provide structure. That means give them a schedule of sorts, because like I said, remember, they're coming into you going, oh my gosh, everything was mapped out for me from start to finish. I need that structure, that scaffolding. That's what onboarding is called. If you look at studies right now, onboarding used to be about a 3-month process. Right now, they're saying with the younger generation, onboarding is anywhere from 9 to 12 months. It's not a bad thing. It's just based on kind of the skill set that these younger employees need. Provide leadership and guidance. What do I mean by that? The number one reason why someone will stay in their job is their boss. It's also the number one reason why they'll leave. To me, that idea of leadership and guidance is not that you know everything, and it is not that you are perfect and not figuring things out as you go as well too. But the idea is that you are guiding your funeral home and your practice kind of the way that you want it to. What are the values? What is the mission? And I don't mean mission in kind of that sense of like, you got to have a mission statement, but why is it that you do the work that you do? You set the tone for your business. So to me, what that means is, how are you coming to work? What is it that you're bringing? That will be modeled by your employees, and acknowledge them. Encourage their can-do attitude. They're coming in and they're excited. They do not start work going, actually, I don't want to be here. I actually hate this. Like, they're young, they're excited. They actually want to make a difference. They're ready to change the world. They're coming with their ideas and they're excited. Foster that. 90% of our ideas are terrible. They're terrible, but it's the enthusiasm. They're excited. Think about that, you know, and this leads into the next one. Encourage them to give their ideas and opinions and listen. It doesn't mean you take all their advice, but you listen. And I say it like this because they've had a seat at the table and they've had their opinions listened to since the time they were children. Think about the number of times you've asked your children what they want for dinner. I'm sure everybody on this call has done that at some point in time or asked a child. I asked the other day, guess what my 8-year-old said? Macaroni and cheese. No surprises there, but that 8-year-old is going to grow up to be one of your employees and they're going to think that their opinion matters. Just like you've told your children and your, grandchildren, all those things, like, you matter, your opinion matters, stand up for what you believe in, all of those things, all of those little things that we've told our children, guess what? Good thing they listened. And so now that's exactly what they're doing to you as employees. Provide the work-life balance. That, to me, again, does not mean that they come in whenever they feel like it and they don't work weekends and this and that and this and that. It just means you ask the question, what is important to your employees? It probably will surprise you the things that they actually want to do. Don't put your values and what you think work-life balance is on them. Just ask the question. And this goes back to think about how all these things start to intertwine. When you're asking them what work-life balance means to them, you're asking them and encouraging them to give their opinions, and you're listening. So all of these things start to build upon each other to make a much better work environment. Create an environment that challenges. Ask them to do new things. Part of what I mean by this is so many times I get the funeral directors that say, oh my gosh, these students today, these new employees, they just sit there. They don't know what to do. They get their stuff done and then they're on their phone. And if you were right in front of me, I'd have my phone out with me and I'd be staying there. And this idea is that they don't necessarily know what's next. If you have a kind of a task list for them and they've completed it and they're not going on to the next thing, in their brains, they've gone, I got the A. I did everything you asked for. They're growing up with these rubrics and things like that. So they've met the minimum. They've met the requirement. And if you meet that and they got the A, they think that they've done the right thing. So what you need to do is provide an environment that challenges. And you might be saying, well, how do I even do that? Well, after they kind of get that task list of their first duties and everything like that, ask them the question, what did I miss? What did I miss? I know that there's something in the prep room that we could be doing better. What is it? That's how we start to create an environment that challenges. At the same time, you're also investing them into your culture and into your kind of way of life, so that they're starting to go, I matter, I'm important, and all of these things, again, they build on each other. Provide opportunities for networking and professional growth. This to me is so important because you want to be able to make sure that they are part of that community. This is a tough job. Funeral directors understand funeral directors, and if they're feeling kind of like your younger employees are feeling like they don't have people to talk to, it's going to make this job really, really difficult. When you think about it, I love conventions and things like that because I love you all looking at each other and smiling, and you say, I've had a day, and everybody understands exactly what that means. I just have a couple more here and then we'll end. Don't mistake why for disrespect. I can't stress this enough. I get funeral directors all the time. These young people think they know everything. They've been at school and they come in thinking they know everything. Okay. But sometimes when they're asking why, and again, there are employees that do that, of course, but a lot of times when they're asking you why, they really are asking that question, why? And they want to know, because think about it. For a lot of them, they graduate, they've done 10 embalmings total, right? 10, that's the bare minimum to graduate from an ABFSC school. So when they come in, they ask you, why are you doing it like that? My teacher didn't do it like that. The book doesn't say that. That's their point of reference. They're not questioning your authority. What they're doing is they're really just asking because they're curious. They want to know the right thing. If they're looking at your forms and say, why do you do it like this? Why do you hand it out at this point? It's not because they want to call the FTC and go, oh my gosh. A lot of times they're just asking why. For some of these students and your new employees, it might be the first time they've ever seen an arrangement with in real time. Think about that. So when they're asking you why, it's because they want to learn your way. Acknowledge their impact. That can be, again, the simple things of recognition. A gift card, an acknowledgement, a good job goes a long way. It doesn't have to be monetary, but I think that, attaching that to it, the only thing that I would say that is that if you're doing monetary things, make sure they know about it. One of the things I always laugh about is that our younger generation, people are putting money and depositing into their accounts. Mom and dad might be depositing in addition to paychecks and things like that. Because I had a few owners say, I gave them a bonus and they never said anything. They didn't even know, because the banking system that we do right now is very different than your mom standing at the grocery line, you know, writing the check and then balancing the checkbook. They don't do that anymore. They just go in on almost on a daily basis and just check their money situation and where it's coming in from. So if you're doing something like that, tell them, make that moment. Finally, create a work environment that's positive and constructive. It's not sunshine and rainbows every single day, but you want to create a place where people actually want to come and be part of it. You all on this call and you all doing this work, it's hard work, but it's great work. And what we need to do is invest in our younger employees and get them enthusiastic and build the morale for why it is that we do the work that we do. It's going to take some work and effort, but I know you all are up to the challenge. With that, I know we are right around our time frame here. If people want to stay on for questions, I'm happy to do that as well. And also feel free to reach out with any questions as well too. So thank you so much for taking this time with me today.
Thank you, Lily. We just have a couple questions that I will go through. Do you have any idea of how many women are in management at large funeral home conglomerates?
That is a great question. I do not off the top of my head, but I will tell you that the number is rising, but it's still significantly lower than the number of men that are kind of in management positions. Changing, but that's still much more male dominated at this point.
The next question, I'm going to try to simplify it, but what is your opinion on equipment transfers? You mentioned the topic of lifting. This isn't a gender-specific concern, but more of a practical concern.
You know what? A great question. I think that right now there's a lot of really interesting kind of tools out there that can be utilized in a way that's not kind of in the family space and kind of all of that stuff. But number one thing that I say is, you know, if you're doing any type of like transfer from a home or anything like that, you need two people there, regardless. You should not be sending anyone by themselves, regardless of size or gender. So that's kind of number one. There are some really interesting, we've profiled a couple of them here at the school. I know that they've come to kind of show us the technology, and it's pretty fantastic of what they can do. I'm forgetting the name right now, but it's a company out of Iowa. And it's actually started by two women for exactly this. And what it does is essentially redistributes the weight, and then it's kind of set up like a cot system. And again, designed exactly to help redistribute that weight and make it a lot easier. Now, are there still going to be like challenging ones? Of course, like the person that's like, you know, behind the chair and all of that, like, you know, making it a challenge, of course. But there are a lot of really great things, and I can send that to you, Kelly, too, so you can see some of the things we've seen at the college that have been very beneficial to both genders as far as lifting.
Okay, great. That looks to be the end of our questions. So again, Lily, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. I always learn so much when I listen to your presentations, and I will let everyone know that Lily will be joining us at our annual convention this year. She's going to be speaking on Tuesday, and it's going to be Tuesday morning. It'll kind of be a bit continuation of this, and it's going to be called The Young and the Restless. And I think, Lily, you mentioned there's going to be some interviews with some students that you're going to show.
Absolutely. So part of that presentation, what we'll do is we'll pick up with a lot of these topics. And I want you to hear from some of the students that were in the profession, because we get that conversation all the time, like people leave within 5 years. So I profiled 6 of our students, and most of them have left the profession. I want from the 6 students, I want you to hear kind of their voices, like what were their concerns? What was going on? Why do you take these individuals that were great kind of students and then started out really good employees? What happened? And how do we start to kind of have that conversation for really the retention piece, which I think is one of the biggest challenges that not only funeral service is seeing, but all sectors are seeing right now. So I'm really excited to share that presentation with you as well.
Great. Well, we can't wait. So again, thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Please allow 5 to 7 business days to get that credit put on your portal. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to us here at the office. I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you.